Hey everybody, welcome back to the YellowCard Vanguard channel. I'm joined by my co-host, Zistro, and we are so excited for the new premium collection reveal that we just had to go through our wish list for everything that we wanted in every clan of Vanguard.
Yeah, I mean, like, as if the ban list wasn't enough, now we get new stuff to play with. It's just, the range of possibilities is just way too wide for us to not do this, right?
Absolutely agree. Like, honestly, we've seen like all the new cards come out, like all the new different builds pop up, and then now with premium collection, maybe this is what we needed to like bring everything up to the same level and therefore have like really cool, interesting effects. Because one of the things that I really liked a lot about the previous premium collection was they would have strides that I would very much consider to be premium plus. Things like Crystal Luster, Chain Rancor, Grog Rock, Stunverse, all of these strides that did something but also kind of kept the identity of the heart that you were on. But then you also have these really cool strides that would activate or have effects while face up in the G zone, namely Nebulos and namely Ichi 2. Rest in peace.
One of the other cool things is that, we've seen Clan Collection in the last few months, and with another one coming up on the horizon, it's really pushed the envelope for card design, which I think is great. But, for now, we've designed a few cards to, like, sort of fit within that sort of envelope and power level. And so we're just going to walk you through, like, what we've come up with.
Let's get into it. We're going to start off with the first clan on the list, and that is Royal Paladins, one of my favorite pet clans. Now, Royal Paladins, instead of talking about the Stride and the G-Guard, I'm going to talk about the G-Guard first, and that is that Royal Paladins really does not have a good pool of G-Guards. A lot of the G-Guards in Royals right now are very restricted to what you're currently playing. Examples given being Maron being one of the best G-Guards for Royal Paladin, but you have to be on Blaster or Alfred for it. Alternatively, a lot of the Brave G-Guards, which do provide a lot of shield or is able to act as like an extra copy of a PG, requires you to have a Brave Vanguard, which the new V Alt Mile is no longer considered a Brave. Now, talking about strides, I'm not too worried about what they give to Royal Paladin for strides, considering how strong Crystal Luster is and how generic it is. You're able to pick up a set of Crystal Luster dragons and throw it into any deck you want, and it will work fine because of its skill to copy the Hearts effect. What I'm hoping for is maybe something also generic enough that every deck can play it, something cool to help with control matchups, as that is Royal Paladin's weak point. Something similar to Ganslot, which has an effect when phase up in the G zone, or maybe an effect that just makes your unit stupid big for no reason, like Act Flip, and then all of your rearguards gain 10k for each one of your rearguards, effectively plus 50k to board. Right after Royal Paladins, we go to our next clan on the list, and that is OTT. Those who know me also know I also love OTT. I love drawing cards, and OTT just happens to fit that flavor. So a stride for OTT. OTT has a lot of really good strides already. We are already very familiar with Ichishima comboing it with Tom to get that unguardable attack. With the introduction of Overtriggers, Waka Hirume now being able to stack the Overtrigger on top of your deck, and everybody knows Calico Momo being able to search for those 3 Amaterasus and get that extra 30k and 3 crit to your Vanguard. So for something like a stride, I want something not as egregious as Ichi, but I do appreciate the effect that Ichi 2 had while face up in the G zone, and would look for something like that. Something maybe like while this card is face up in the G zone, when you were to look at a card or draw a card, draw an extra one. And maybe a stride that once again lets you rearrange top X. X being the number of face up G units you currently have, and it will really let you kind of play on that Oracle word and lets you dictate the future of the game. As for a G-Guard, once again playing on that Oracle term, something that lets you rearrange the top X of your deck. Lets you stack defensives, also lets you stack towards your next offensive turns as well.
Because you have Susanoo, who's all about revealing cards and activating trigger effects. But then you also have Magus, which is all about telling the future and seeing what's on top of your deck. And then even further down, you have Battle Sister, which is its own separate thing. And it's kind of like, we're trying to give everyone their equal support here. So moving on, the next line we have on the line is Angel Feather. Now, both myself and Tony are heavy Angel Feather enthusiasts. He likes his Gavrel, I like my Malkuth. And again, there's these different paradigms of building angels. You also have Celestial somewhere in the corner that people don't really care about. And angels have some decent strides, especially in the form of Basicel and the original Raphaels. I'm still seeing a lot of play. But one thing that Angel Feather really lacks is some form of board control or pressure, like being able to interact with the opponent in a meaningful way. And as much as we like to have something like, say, crit pressure or multi-tap pressure, we do kind of already have those inherently or implicitly. So I think what Angel Feather is missing is a bit of reach. And so the way to do that is harking back to things like Managama Aurum or Neberos is something with a really simple G-Zone effect, like on attack, put one opponent's ring into the damage, they heal, then you call from damage and take one. So like the combination of Zain and Harut. Pretty simple, like nothing major, very in Angel Feather theme, but it's technically a +2, which is exactly what you need for a good first stride. And then we also want it to have a face-up G-Zone skill, so that it counts as a face-up card in your G-Zone when you're counting damage. That way, when you're second striding a Bassacell, they're taking 6, 7 cards. Bang, baby, that's what we want.
Yeah, going on to what you said about the first stride, needing that +2. Despite how old Angel Feather is in the game, there's a lot of strides for it that just don't do too much on the first stride. So just being able to get a simple +2, like +1 to yourself, -1 to your opponent, just starting to build up that like tempo disparity. Hopefully it goes a long way for the Angel Feather deck.
Moving on, we then have Shadow Paladin. Now, we have the artwork for this one already. It was revealed on the reveal slide. And there's a lot you can take from just the artwork alone. Like they say, a picture says 1,000 words. And to me, this thing looks like a lot like a Revenger. It reminds me of the Revenger Legion that wasn't Phantom Blaster. It reminds me of him a lot. But what I'm hoping for actually is Claret support. That's the one archetype we haven't seen enough of. We had Raging Form, which is the Revenger support. Luard is Luard, he doesn't need support. And there's a lot of ways we can take this. But I think the best way to approach this is, because so many of the V Shadow Paladin stuff is very Vanguard centric, we think giving them their own stun burst is probably the best idea. Because if there's one thing that Shadow Paladin likes, it's filling up their drop zone. So maybe just a stun burst that fills up your own drop zone and gives you some power, maybe searches for some grade 1s. Ideally, it would activate at the start of battle phase, not as an act. That way, Luard doesn't get to do Luard things. And maybe even just do stuff based on the number of grade 1s in drop. It can have a lot of text, why not? In terms of G-Guards, I think we all know what we want. We just want a blue Espada. Just when you guard with it, mill, gain shield, Dark Plot Maker's nice, but it's not always live. Or we could just have something like, maybe a bit of a higher restriction, like a higher requirement, like blue Espada, mill, and then if you have 5 grade 1s, gain 20k shield. That would be nice as well, but just something that either replace Bronak, or make you feel less bad about using Dark Veil.
Now, hopping on to our next clan, we're going to take a look at Genesis. So, Genesis already has a very in-meta deck in Regalia. And that's because they have access to Minerva Stride, being boosted by Norn, etc, etc, etc. They also have access to Marduk, which is supposedly their generic Stride, as well as Armaruda also being generic. But Marduk is more tending towards Himiko, so to say. Whereas, also Poets as well, because of how many crits you're able to get off your Astral Plane Drive checks, then you're able to go into Marduk right after. Whereas Armaruda, 15 soul for that guard restrict? Not too realistic, in my opinion.
Just using it to fill up your soul, and the problem is that both Amaruda and Marduk also don't focus on that last forgotten child of Genesis, which is the Fenrir style of build. And obviously Fenrir doesn't exist anymore because Taro died, but
yeah,
there is probably still some room for a very mid-rangey, just generic good stuff Genesis, right?
Yeah, so what we've thought about is kind of harking back to what Vandergander used to be before its V retrain. How on Stride you'd be able to kind of stack your deck after your opponent has committed their card. We're gonna call him Vandergander Prime. Something that has that board control that V Vandergander has, on Stride. Maybe you can Soul Blast some number to wipe your opponent's board. At the same time, also get that stack that you're looking for after your opponent has committed their guard. You can take a look at your deck and kind of see alright, I've got trigger, no trigger, no trigger, trigger. Let me go ahead and rearrange like this. Activate maybe a optional soul charge to get those 2 non-triggers into soul, and bam, bam. I love anime.
Pretty straightforward. It doesn't need to do much. And because it might have the generic soul charge effect, it might not. You could still potentially play it in Regalia or Himiko or whatever, because again, it's just as good as Amaruda, right?
Now, let's take a look at what Genesis has for G-Guards. A lot of Genesis G-Guards right now all do something very similar, and that is to put cards from drop zone into soul. And then we also have a G-Guard that flips to start putting cards from drop zone back into deck, which is really helpful considering sometimes how fast Genesis decks itself out. So I'm hoping for a G-Guard that does something similar without having to flip another G-Guard at like maybe like a weaker pace, something just like send 2 back, gain 5k, send 2 back, Soul Charge 1, gain 5k, or maybe even Soul Blast cards to send back to your deck as well.
Like, one thing I really miss is when I was playing G, like, old Legion, G Regalia, I miss being able to call a Secret Elsie, Soul Blast 10, and make my Vanguard, like, 50k defensive. So maybe something, like, along those lines as well would be really cool, like, you know, bring in the Soul Blast cost, maybe give you power cross turn, maybe also with the recycling effect mentioned just above, you know, previously, but, you know, a little bit more interaction than just, drop to Zol, power, shield. Moving on, we then have Gold Paladin, and I think we can all agree that Ezel has been a plague in our existence for more than enough time. So I'd like to put a lot of focus onto Gurgit especially, because ever since Gurgit got kneecapped in V with the Percival restriction, he hasn't really done much. Like, we've never really seen Gurgit in Premium at all. Like, Gurgit had its heyday in G, and that was kind of it. And one of the cool things I like about V Gurgit is that it plays towards that defensive style, which we haven't really seen in quite a long time. So, again, I'd like to see another stride with a G-Zone effect, but this time, while it's facing the G-Zone, when your Vanguard's being attacked, it gives you some defensive effect, like flip face down to get plus 10k, or, you know, something along those lines. It can even just be Gurgit named restricted. I'm okay with that. Like, I do. We don't have to make everything generic. I just think that the Gurgit could do with some love. And then as for the actual Vanguard circle effect, you know, it could just be something simple, like on attack, top 3 call 1, like just a Quill clone. I think there's nothing wrong with just printing Amber clones onto strides. I think that's totally fine. That, or we could just get another Stunburst clone, you know, just act, return to the G-Zone, top 3 call 1. Designing Gold Paladin cards is pretty easy, guys. Just say top X call 1, like whatever, man. For G-Guards, it's really hard because Gold Paladin has, in my opinion, one of the best G-Guards in the game, which is Slimy Flare. It's really hard to top that, like, because you can Slimy Flare for PGs. Like, that alone is, like, nutty as all heck. But at the same time, you want to play towards that sort of defensive line of what Gold Paladin does, and as cool as Elise is kind of lame. I'm thinking about something that either gains a bunch of shield for each of your rear guards, because we don't have that yet, like scaling shield for each of your rear guards, kind of like the Tachikaze G-Guard, but opposite, or just, with Slimy Flare, skip the middleman, just print a G-Guard that bot decks rears to give the PG effect. Like, if Brave can get PG G-Guards, why can't Golds? Make it Unite restricted, who cares? So now that we finished with Unite Sanctuary, let's move on to the Dragon Empire. And first up is Kagero, Overlord, the clan. Blade Master doesn't exist. Blade Master doesn't exist. I just have one request for the Overlord Stride. Please don't restand. Oh my god, like it's that meme, right? Like when you're a vegan and I'm going 5 minutes not telling people. It's like when you're a Kangaroo Strider and you don't restand, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think with like
something else.
I think something with like Premium Kagero, like ever since like the induction of Premium Kagero has been very vertical. Like a lot of game plans you look at, like column, left column, center column, right column. Premium Kagero has always been what's happening in the center here is all I care about. Everything here, who cares? So I think it'd be cool to see a stride for Kagero that kind of branches out rather than going vertical, it plays more horizontally.
Yeah, like we had something similar to it with Zanbust that gives your grade 3 rig, like all of your grade 3 units gain 10k. Like, why not something that stands your rear guards instead of standing your Vanguard for once? Or maybe even like, you know, just giving your rear guards power based on how many open circles your opponent has. Or if you want to like stay Vanguard focused, go deep, go and like explore other avenues, like, you know, heavy guard restrict. Like, you guys remember the Purge? You know, gain drive equals to your opponent's damage checks. Why not make guard restrict equal to your opponent's damage zone? Like, if they have 4 damage, guard with 4 cards, please. That'd be pretty cool, right? So yeah, just something that doesn't restand, man. In terms of G guards, oh yeah, Lord Keeper. In terms of G guards, like, you have the chicken. It's like everything starts and ends with the chicken.
Yeah, you have the chicken. What else do you want?
I guess maybe some sort of utility, like some sort of counter charge if you have more ray guards than your opponent, like, you know, playing towards that, like the old Blaze days. Like, you know, we have chicken for ray guard attacks, and you have what's his name, Absalam for like big shield. So yeah, I guess just like maybe counter charge, maybe soul charge, maybe draw discard, something along those lines would be nice to see. It would be nice to see G guards with utility as opposed to just G guards with numbers.
Continuing on with Dragon Empire, we're gonna take a look at the more ninja end of things with Nubatama. Now, Nubatama in Premium, it plays Dominate, it plays tokens, but that's all kind of lame.
You play tokens in Premium?
Tokens are grade 0s. Jakumetsu retires grade 0s. I think.
Yeah, I guess Shiranui makes masks still in Premium, maybe?
Maybe? But yeah, either way, the transitioning of V Premium Nubatama to Premium Nubatama hasn't exactly been a straight and narrow road as we had hoped for. I kind of wanted to design a stride for Nubatama which kind of played off of the new support it got in Daihozan, which kind of plays off of how Nubatama used to be with a lot of like hand shredding. So what I kind of came up is maybe scaling off of their hand size, so the lower their hand gets in the later game, the easier it is to finish them off, because despite Nubatama having like that kind of mechanic, you did find it hard to close out games. So I imagine something like Stunverse, but for Nubatama. Something that came onto the board and then disappeared jutsu its way back into the G zone, and then you're back on your Vanguard. What I was hoping for is something that like forces your opponent to call new cards over their current ones, and then like if you're on Daihozan here and your opponent's calling cards over their current ones to like A, not only retire their board, but B, proc Daihozan to make them discard more. This then turns on the bird, Kokushi Garasu. Even if you're playing Shiranui as your heart, it turns that on as well.
There's also synergy with Mizukaze, which is super cool.
That is super cool. But more importantly, I think one of the most important things to get in their G-Guard is a forced discard. None of this do you discard bullshit, it's you will discard. I think being able to force your opponent and not give them the option of discarding is really important, and hopefully we do get something like that. Continuing on as well, trying to step away from the ninja side and go more into the Dino DNA, I want to talk about Tachikaze. This stride, the new stride that Tachikaze gets, it has to have Engorge. Because of all the old cards that exist requiring your Vanguard to have Engorge, this is a mandatory for Tachikaze to kind of like re-enter the meta, like try and like join the top dogs, the top dinos of the meta at the moment. Like,
yeah, like Neberos is really, really good, don't get me wrong, but it's very linear. Like once you're going into Neberos, the way you play the rest of the turn is pretty much set. And so it'd be nice to have a bit more of a, what's the word? More relaxed stride, like not just go all in, but sort of like let's play it a little bit more gently here. Let's not deck out by second stride,
Yeah, like just like you said, Neberos is so strong. Yangchu is really strong as well. Like the Tachi G zone is already stacked to all heck in terms of like tempo and finishing power. We kind of just want a way to branch ourselves into the tempo and finishing power that we need. Something that just helps us find the rear guards we need for our combo turns. Something that helps us get the hand that we need to guard to go into our next turn. Now, for their G guard, something very simple, something that plays off of like the equip gauges, because that is kind of like what Tachikaze has kind of gone towards. Just on place, for each rear guard with a gauge, gain 5k shield. Then, because of how important our rear guards are, the G-Guard can also give our rear guards with the gauge an extra 5k power to make them just that much harder to hit. Let's undo our transformation jutsu going into dinosaurs. Let's come back to our ninja selves. Let's talk about Murakumo. Murakumo has a lot to pay for their sins. They're paying Nue Dio tax until the 5th reboot even. But let's go something very simple. Something simple that like Murakumo can just go into a first stride for. Something that pluses 2 board. On attack, choose 2 units, clone them. +2 to board also enables some multi-attacks. If you wanted to, you can also clone Shirayuki to give some -10k. But either way, like, it's simple, it's soft, it's not too overbearing, and it's that soft plus that you're looking for in the first stride. As for G-Guards, we thought of something really cool, and that's a lot of the G-Guards that we thought of today was more of a match our playstyle and get rewarded, don't and get punished. So for the Murakumo G-Guard, it's going to be something like, if your opponent doesn't have another unit with the same name as the unit attacking, you bot deck the attacking unit. Denial Griffin!
Rear guard. You don't want to be bot decking their Vanguard. That's a bit good. That's a bit too good.
If your opponent doesn't have another unit with the same name as attacking Rear Guard, bot deck it. There we go.
Yeah, like, you know, it's something that you would expect to see. You expect to see those words, you know, in that order on a Murakumo card, just not in that direction. Yep. And then rounding off Dragon Empire, we have Narukami. Now, I mean, Stunverse is so generic already that this should absolutely be specific. And as we can see from the artwork, it looks a lot like a Kaiser. Oh, give me that vermilion. Make Kaisers great again.
I want to damage myself for 6, please.
Like, you know, we've had the blood now in one of the most recent clan collections, and as cool as it would be to play off of that theme, I think we can have some sort of synergy, some more parallel synergy. So something like on attack, Soul Blast any number of Kaisers because you're shoving a bunch of Kaisers in Soul. So rather than Soul Blasting to get drives with the blood, you're Soul Blasting for this stride, and then it calls back to the original Kaiser, which is for each Kaiser you Soul Blast, attack an additional unit, and then, you know, Soul Blast 5 deal a damage, Soul Blast 5 do something, like, just do something messed up, right? It's Kaiser, like, it should just be really, really cool, like, you know, both players take a damage, why not? Just, like, you know, kill yourself and take your opponent with you. Go for it.
Yeah, you know what? I think that'd be amazing for rulings, but I'm down for it. That sounds really fun.
Yeah. Like, for the G-Guard, again, Narukami is just another clan with these ultra cracked G-Guards. So, I mean, between Impede, which is almost a better Griffin, and between Bulwark, which is, again, almost a better Griffin, what more do you really need, right? And I guess the answer is just raw shield value. So I think the one thing that Narukami is missing right now is good bind scaling. Like, we have Voltage for the offensive bind scaling, but we've got no defensive bind scaling. So maybe something like, you know, on play, gain 5k shield for every 4 cards in bind, or like maybe gain 3k shield for every 3 cards in bind. Just like lower the threshold, make it easy, make it good. Just something, you know, just something that's more than 25k shield. Moving on to Stargate, or Brandgate as it's now called. We move on to Nova Grappler, and again, Nova Grappler has a very, very good generic strike to begin with in the name of Busted. And you don't even have to be playing Victor to make Busted work. I've seen Heroes Busted, I've seen Asura Busted, I've even seen Rises Busted. So, you can do whatever you want. However, I'm going to speak from the heart here. We're going to go over the personal bias. There's one archetype that I particularly love for Nova Grappler that hasn't received much love in the V-Series, and that's Blouse. And I think we're due for another Blouse ride. Like, we already have Blazar and Sona for finishing the games, like, you know, to rewrite a Grade 3 from Soul. I think what we need now is just some sort of, like, plussing stride to get you into Blazar or Sona. Because the problem with Blazar and Sona is that they're both Limit Break 4 and 5. And on your first stride, you're not always going to be Limit Break 4 or 5. And that's kind of lame. So you want to have a first strike that you can go into no matter what, that does something no matter what, that sets up your Blazar and Jumbold, that then sets up your Galaxy Stern combo. So I just want to, you know what? We're just going to steal Jumbold. On attack, for every 2 Blau rear guards, draw a card. That's fine. I think that's all we need.
No, I had an idea as well myself. So lately in V Premium, I have been very much enjoying Risers. I've been enjoying abusing Cat Butler, catching people with their pants down because they'll no guard on a crit, or they will guard and I get a crit on my dual flare, and I have like 3 Cat Butlers. I want a stride that has no effects, except that it loses 2 grades on the Vanguard circle. This makes your stride grade 2, which means you're able to use Cat Butler with it, but more importantly, because your Vanguard is not grade 3 or greater, your opponent can't G-Guard.
Surprisingly, there's a lot of impact for such a simple line of text. I think that would also be very funny. I'm down to keep playing Cat Butler, and the best thing is, because this is premium, we get to play the old Cat Butler, which is strictly better. In terms of G-Guards, Nova Grappler already has some pretty good G-Guards, and you know, all of them already play towards Nova Grappler's game plan. So looking at what we did for Murakumo, I think something that plays around your opponent's game plan would be pretty cool. And I think we've had one or two G guards already that can call themselves from the G zone for an alternate cost, like Bearlock, which we had in the most recent premium selection. I think we can do a bit better than that. Like, if there's one thing Nova Grappler cares about, it's standing rear guards. So what about a G guard that says, when your opponent's rear guard that has stood by an effect this turn attacks, Soul Blast 1 calls it from the G zone. You know, it's just free 15k shield, don't have to burn a heal for it, turns on GB for your busted combo. Just generically good free shield. And consider the amount of standing we have in the format, I think you'd be surprised at how often it might come up.
Let's talk about the other RoboClan, Dimension Police. Now, Dimension Police in Premium, they've got a lot of good tools already. Like, Geoma Glass is already good setup and a finisher in itself. It has like a very strong G-Zone face-up effect, being able to make your grade 3 stronger, being able to make your grade 3s bulkier, already very good in itself. X Gallop is also an incredibly good finisher itself. You combine this with Linka, you get that big guard break that like you need a PG to guard, but then the PG can be broken. It's grade 3 to clan. What else can you really get? So, having looked at that side of Dimension Police with like all the grade 3s, all the big power, we kind of want to explore the other side of Dimension Police, and that's Zeal, the upcoming Original Saber Zero. Cards that kind of like negative your opponent's power. Something cool like auto on the Vanguard circle. Whenever your opponent's rearguard's power becomes 0 or less, instantly retire it.
Yeah, kind of like how Dimension Police plays in Vanguard 0. For those of you that play 0, you know, that's what you're used to, right? Something hits 0, it dies. But we don't have that in the TCG. If something's on 0 power, it's just on 0 power. And it would introduce a lot of board control to DP, which historically hasn't had that much board control.
Yeah, and then second effect, some sort of global power reduction. All of your opponent's units get minus power for some criteria. Something
On
simple
attack,
like that.
Acts, whatever, like, you know, just something that just, you know, probably like you ideally want to hit like neg 10k so you can retire all of your opponent's rear guards, but you know, it doesn't have to be first strike. You could be like minus 5k for each face-up G unit, but just something to, you know, play to that sort of game plan, right?
Yeah. And then lastly, let's talk about the G-Guard. Now, because Dialiner exists, because
Why would you have the G-Guard?
Why would you have a G-Guard? Your grade 3 heal guardian is just that so much bigger. So instead of looking towards power, let's look towards utility. I'm thinking like we're thinking about a G-Guard, which plays off of how many grade 3 units that Dimension Police uses. Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, draw a card for each grade 3 unit. 15k shield, that's it. So you are like trading off the big shield for the ability to just draw more cards, find the pieces you need to go into your next kill turn.
Or
Simple
alternatively,
like
just draw grade 3s and then guard with them.
that. Eventually, maybe that comes up to be more shield because of how busted Dialiner, Geoma Glass, and combination are.
Moving on, we have, it's my turn, Link Joker. Now, with Link Joker, it's really hard to make a good generic stride option because there's 3 different decks in Link Joker. And unlike other clans with 3 different decks, these decks are all literally different. Like, you share like maybe the triggers, and that's it, and maybe the G-Guards. Like, you have Star Vader. Star Vader doesn't need good first strides though, because you already have both glue balls. Messiah is Messiah, you just have all your Messiah strides, and you just do Volko garbage. So I think the only like real archetype in Link Joker that hasn't been properly explored yet is Deleter. Now we have Aldian, which is cool, and we have Agorg, which is cool, but every single Deleter stride deletes your opponent's Vanguard, which, you know, I get, you know, that's what they do, but we've reached a point now where so many of the Deleter grade 3s are on play, delete your opponent's Vanguard. So I'd like to see a stride that if you have a Deleter Heart and your opponent's Vanguard is deleted, not delete them, but do something else, like restand, gain crit, gain drives, guard restrict, whatever. Just make it so that you can ride a grade 3, delete your opponent's Vanguard, and then get rewarded for striding immediately afterwards, right? That would just be cool. Like, we don't need Star Vader strides, we don't need Messiah strides, we need Deleter strides. Do the right thing, Bushiroad. You know, I'm thankful for Barrio End, but generic and Link Joker, at least for strides. For G-Guards, that's a whole nother story. For G Guards, I think we all know what we want. And there's two big things here. There's two things we need to accomplish. The first one is we want a Denial Griffin. We want a G Guard that locks your opponent's attacking unit. I don't think that's too much to ask for, honestly. Like, yes, it's very, very, very good. Yes, it feels very, very bad to play against. But I'm willing to pay a huge cost. I'm willing to pay GB1, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, discard a card, and G-Flip, and lock your own rearguard, just to lock one of your opponent's rearguards in the same column. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Messiah can do stuff with his own lock cards, and if not, you can always just Destiny Guardian out. It's no different to Lacus Carina, right? Just a smaller Lacus Carina. Just targeted, please. And the important thing is, it flips anything. Because if there's one thing Messiah players want, we want a second stride integral. So I want a G-Guard that lets me flip my Amnesty. That I appreciate that that's pushing it a lot.
A lot.
But I think we've reached that point where it's okay. Please? Please? You know what? So I've listed two things I want there in that G-Guard. Either enable second stride integral or is a Griffin. I will take one of the two. Either is fine.
I think that's more fair.
Yeah. So moving on to Dark States, we then have Spike Brothers. And it's quite interesting because Spikes was one of those decks that after the ban list that just came out, we were like, Spikes hasn't been touched. This deck is surely still really good, right? And yet we haven't really seen it make many waves in Premium. So I think the issue is that Spikes has kind of lost its identity. Like, it was known as a multi-attack deck, a very all-in, but then Hellheart 8 made it very defensive and just like, wait, boom combo. And I'd like to see it move towards more of that sort of reckless, like, just go for it, like, if I don't kill you, I die sort of game plan. And I think there's a way of combining that with V-era Spike's design about caring about force markers. Now, we already have Villain Verminus that cares about force markers, but we don't really have a stride that plays with force markers. So I'm thinking, for those of you that remember back in like old like OG era Spikes, their effects would be call from deck and then bottom deck, like, sorry, G era Spikes. They would call from the deck and then after their battle go back into the deck. Why don't we do that with force markers? Make a stride that gives you a bunch of force markers, like, maybe one for each rearguard or one for each of the existing force markers, and then at the end of turn they vanish. Like that temporary, like, during your turn only, during for that one turn only, get like 4 force markers, but then lose all your force markers, like, pay the price, like, go all in, and then if it fails, you have no more force markers. Unfortunate. I think that would be really cool. It's a nice, like, it's that risky design space we don't see enough of nowadays. In terms of G-Guards, I mean, who cares, man? Just give it, just another G-Guard that flips. Make a G-Guard that flips 2 G-Guards. I don't care, man. Just like, Hellheart, like, because they already gain tons of shield value, and they already, like, there's already draw discard utility. Like, what do you need? Just Hellheart Turbo. Just give me that second stride Hellheart, man. I don't care anymore. In fact, you know what? I was gonna say flip 3, but I think that might be a bit too much.
Flip 6 G units for Counterblast 4.
Flip all of your G zones.
Yeah, flip all your G zones except for 1.
Hellheart and to do something incredible, so like end your opponent's turn. Why not?
Why not? Moving on to the next clan in Dark States, Dark Irregulars. Now you look here, all you DI players, you deserve to be punished. We have suffered due to Gasteel Daimonas, and you will pay for his sins. What kind of stride are you guys gonna get? Probably something hot dog watered here. You're still paying for Gasteel's sins. That card has terrorized Premium for its existence. It managed to dodge 2 ban lists. You're paying for it. Now on the lighter side of things, we can kind of see DI more of like a toolboxy in the soul kind of manner, rather than toolboxy. Maybe something simple like Obadiah for a set number of cards in your deck, just like so you can set up certain cards like Variance Killer Tail. You can set up certain cards like Ironheart Assassin easier just by striding into this Obadiah-esque card and just finding 4 cards from your deck to soul charge in, call one out. Maybe only 3. We don't want people to turn one hard like you, so. As for the G-Guard, I think because, similarly to Genesis, because of how much soul charging you do risk deck out. And even though Bluddermouse has its own ability to kind of return cards to the deck, at that point it might be too late. So how about a G-Guard that just puts a number of normal units from soul back to deck and you gain shield based on how many? It could also be Vanguard to Vanguard. That way you're kind of restricted on it at the timing, but the method still stands that it's just a way to put cards from your soul back to deck. So going into the next Dark States deck, that's Pale Moon. Now, I've recently picked up Pale Moon myself, inspired by all the friends over at WCC, and I've always been a fan of Nightmare Dolls as well. If you can go back to way early Premium, when I first featured Leslie and the new Alice with Fairfield, that I've always had that in the back of my mind, and I was so happy to see them kind of bring it back. Now, PM, we already have Dark Lord Princess, so anything PM gets, if it's an auto skill or Magia, will be busted as hell. So it has to have an act skill that is good or not be Magia, so Dark Lord Princess can't abuse it.
You even already have a stun burst in the form of Beatrix. Like, come on, man.
So, yeah, you're right. So, we already have a lot of good strides that do a lot, so let's think of just something really simple. Something that recalls back to that Go Paladin stride Scourge Point Dragon, but, I don't know, Circus Point Dragon. Instead of, superior calls from deck, superior calls from soul. That unit gains 5, this unit gains 5. That unit gains 5, this unit gains 5. And in a deck like Pale Moon that just has a lot of extenders, those 5s will add up. As for G-Guard, we already have a lot of good G-Guards. We already have our form of Janelle Griffin in calling out the tricky assistant on our opponent's battle phase to just kind of negate an attack. So why not get some utility here? Maybe we've drawn or drove check a card that we really need in soul. G-Guard. Put it from hand into soul, draw 2. Simple. Doesn't have to be a large G-Guard value considering of how high impact our G-Guards are already. Something that just helps us dig for pieces, something utility. On to another Dark States clan, and the last one, Gear Chronicle. Make ZTB playable again. Make ZTB playable again. I want to be able to experience the nostalgia factor of just infinite plus, infinite engine. Time skip your opponent. Just make ZTB playable, and at the even though ZTB has all of these strong cards, they're still gated by the fact that they are restricted to ZTB.
Yeah, you have all these great strides like Avenir Phoenix is nuts, Split Pegasus is nuts, Gear Next is nuts, and the combo of Merry Block plus Metal Party is nuts. Unicorn is great, Transit Dragon is great, Cruising Dragon is great. I think the problem with ZTB is that all of its trigger values are still 5k and all of its shield values are 5k. So the deck, the effects are fine, it's just the entire deck is playing with old numbers. So I think some sort of stride that can fix that, as it were. I don't know how you'd fix it, but if you can fix it, I think that's all you really need, right?
Yeah, something that, we've harkened back to, activates in the G-Zone while face up. Maybe kind of restrict this to only one copy in the G-Zone, but something that just says all your ZTB units gain 5k shield. Something to kind of bring them into the numbers that we're dealing with right now post V Premium. Now, as for a stride, something else that I want to look at, we got Steam Maiden released in the new clan collection, and there aren't a lot of great Steam Maiden names. An idea I had was, because the strides would be a grade 4, have this be a Steam Maiden named Stride, with also effect while face up in the G-Zone, have it count as being in the Bind Zone. So, once you attack with the grade 3 Steam Maiden Rearguard, you can use Elusco to kind of, go back into the Stride again. Onto the Rearguard circle, obviously.
Maybe even have the stride itself, the effect of the Vanguard effect of the stride, is that at the end of the battle it attacks, it goes back into your G zone, but your Vanguard stays rested. So you don't get an extra Vanguard attack, but you can then turn your rearguard into that grade 4 Steam Maiden that you just put into the G zone.
Yeah, something simple like that, but basically you get double duty out of that Steam Maiden stride should it happen.
Exactly.
As for the G-Guard, because Gears Premium has always been some kind of Chrono Jet variant, kind of wanted to move away from it, but also support it at the same time. Just a simple effect.
Just be honest, dude. Gears has always been like the favorite child of Bushiroad. They have twice as many G-Guards as most other clans, and they have more playable G-Guards than some clans have G-Guards at all.
I'm looking at you, Royals.
Like, you have Heteround, nuts. You have Uluru, nuts. You have Arlim, not played anymore, but still good. You have Rafana, amazing. Like, all of the G-Guards are so good!
Yeah, so I think with the G-Guard we thought of, it's just going to be something very simple. Like, our G-Guard pool is already incredible enough. Give them something simple. Bind 2 rear guards, draw or countercharge. Simple,
Or
simple.
both.
Why not both?
So moving on to Magallanica, we have the first, which is Grand Blue. Now, does Grand Blue even need it? Like, come on. I think,
No.
like, everyone's already saying that Grand Blue is one of the best clans in Premium. Like, what could you possibly want? You have Obadiah for the setup. You have Bad Bounty for your Crystal Luster / Stunverse / just general good card stride. You've got reliable finishes in the form of Megiddo and Balanera. You have extenders in the form of like Negra Songer if you need it. You have plussing in the form of Gash if you still play that. I don't know. I haven't looked at Grand Blue in a long time, but like, what else do you even want? What else do you want?
Yeah, Grand Blue at this point is like very spoiled for toys. So like, they've got all these toys to play with right now. I don't even think Grand Blue knows what else they want.
Exactly. And so the thing that I want to look at when it comes to this Preem collection is, let's not just support Night Rose or just / generic Grand Blue good stuff. Let's do something that people would not have expected to see, and something that has the risk of being garbage, but at least they tried. Because if there's one clan that can afford the design space, it's Grand Blue, right? Like, you guys have been eating so well for the last however many sets. I'm sure Grand Blue players aren't going to be upset if they go one set where Grand Blue support isn't busted. So, hear me out. On attack, call from drop zone to each circle with a marker. So we can support Protect 2 styles and support 7Cs. Remember those? Yeah. The G-Guard, I mean, sure, Grand Blue is maybe lacking a bit in G-Guards. Like, you have Negra Lily, Negra Nora, both really good. And I guess maybe you could do maybe putting cards back into the deck, like just so you don't deck out, or if you just you already have multiple copies of this thing that you don't need multiples of in the drop zone, just just to fill up your deck. Just do something like countercharge, maybe. I know you guys need resources, so why not?
Continue on with Magallanica. Two of my favorite premium decks. First one being Bermuda Triangle. Ever since we lost Trois, Riviere as a deck has kind of been flopping, pun intended. Bermuda Triangle has never had anything great for first stride. Normally their first stride is Shandy, and all Shandy does is kind of enable a soft multi-attack at the cost of a counterblast.
It doesn't help that all we have now is Highlander stuff, and Highlanders, I kind of hate that deck for logistical reasons.
I agree. I fell asleep having to cast that deck. Something simple. Highlander can play it, Riviere can play it, Anj can play it, your mom can play it. Something simple. On attack, bounce 1, draw 1, call 1. Very simple. Yeah, bounce 1, draw 1, call 1. Simple, no cost associated with it, but most importantly, it has a very cool G-Zone effect. Now, when we thought about this, we thought back to the facts that Bermuda Triangle, these are idol units. And idol units, they have concerts, right? And at the end of a concert, what happens? Encore! 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 So, at the end of your Vanguard attack, while it's face up in the G-Zone, pay a cost, bounce your rearguards back to hand, call this out of the G zone as a rearguard attacker. It's a design space that was already looked at in Bermuda Triangle with like the Frederica stride that just calls out all your G zone units as like rearguard attackers. So why not kind of like introduce that mechanic to non-Highlander as well? Now, as for the G guard, yeah, we're still paying sins for Ellie, but I think we've been paying long enough that I think Bermuda can get a good G guard now. Something simple, Vanguard on Vanguard attack, running back to the imagery of Bermuda Triangle units being idols, and your opponent's board being the crowd. We can gain shield for each opponent's open or occupied circle, so the more fans that we've been able to acquire as Bermuda Triangle, the stronger our G-Guard gets. Something like that.
I'll give it points for thematicness.
Now, going into one of my other favorite decks, Aquaforce. Let's talk about the strides first. They have Jumbled. Jumbled is really good. Like, it's probably one of the best first strides in Aquaforce, like almost in the game, I dare say.
It's pretty much redefined Aquaforce as a clan, right?
Yeah, like it turned Aquaforce from like some kind of aggression deck, like on first stride, to kind of a farm deck into aggression. And our finale is Alexandros. Alexandros is a decent finisher, don't get me wrong, but it scales weakly as it scales off of G era power, only giving 5k per face of G zone. So the stride that we envisioned is a stride that you can go into early, but also helps you late. Now, Aquaforce, they've had very rearguard centric strides. Jumbled, you want to look at how many rearguards you have for effect. Alexandros, you're resetting your rearguards for attacks. So this stride we envisioned would have been more Vanguard centric and have the ability in G zone to increase the power of later attacks. In essence, something really simple on attack, standard rearguard, give it 10k. Kind of like half of a Lambros that's not restricted by. Now, more importantly, while in the G zone, whenever your rearguard attacks, if it is the 4th battle of that turn or more, that unit gains 5k. This helps Alexandros scale faster, as well as giving first stride Jumbled a bit more bite. Now, the G guard that we kind of thought of was something that represented the motion of waves on the defensive. Something like your ship being rocked back and forth. Because of like these high-powered waves, you kind of veer off course of where you wanted to go. So we thought something about cool, like maybe pay a heavy cost, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, which is not heavy considering Galphilia exists. You can choose 2 of your opponent's standing rearguards and exchange their position. So the exchanging a position of rearguards is something that Aquaforce does on the offensive, but when you bring it to the defensive ends of things and start bringing in some disruption, I think that's when you make your opponent think a bit more about how they make their board.
It's surprisingly simple at first glance, just wheel assault for your opponent, but you can do things like interrupt their multi-attack combos, get rid of their boosters potentially, Hamiel with loads of crits is like, nope, back row please. Like, there's actually a surprising amount of application for it. So moving on to Zoo, we start off with Great Nature, and you know what? You already have a bunch of good generic strides. You have Battle Roll and you have Managamo Aurum. You're eating well enough. Managamo Aurum is also actually a busted card. Like, the words on that card are actually too good. Like, anyone who thinks otherwise is delusional. So, just like with Link Joker, just like with Pale Moon, let's dial it back a bit. Let's look at a different angle. Like with Grand Blue, let's look at something that hasn't normally seen support otherwise. And I kind of want to see a Hamsuke stride. Like, Hamsuke's always been that fan favorite archetype, the plucky underdog. That's the problem.
Suki na no wa.
That's the problem with
Himawari no tane.
This is the problem with Hamsuke, right? Is that it's never really had a defined game plan. It's just played cards and done great nature-y things. And I kind of like to see maybe a hark back to the original Hamsuke. Like, we had the Hamsuke Premium Collection stuff, Clan Collection stuff that rewrote Hamsuke. Why not have a stride that does the same thing? Put the Grade 1 and the Grade 2 Hamsuke from Rearguard into Soul, rewrite the Grade 3 Hamsuke from hand. Like, Chat Noir does it, why can't Hamsuke do it? It'd be the one thing that generically good, Rhino, Crayon, Battle Roll, Great Nature can't do. Multi-attack with Vanguard. In terms of G-Guards, Great Nature already has a few pretty good G-Guards already. You've got Almirage, you've got Sankalpa, you've got Ardillo. Like, there's utility and shield value combined in those, right? So I think what you really need here is maybe a G-Guard that harks to the V-era design principles. So I'm sure there's a few of you out there who are into Isabel, sickos. Those of you, why not get a G-Guard that mills? You know, G-Guard on play, mill 1. If it's a normal unit, counter charge and or draw. And if it's a trigger, 15, 20k shield, some number, just, you know, do one of two things. And if you are an Isabel, do both. Why not? Who gives a shit? Not me. Just a good G-Guard. Then looking at the next clan, we have Neonectar. And this is the last one that we have the artwork for. And looking at the artwork, it's very Bloom-esque, right? It gives me vibes of, like, you know, Anelma, Inverno sort of thing. And I actually always enjoyed Bloom Neonectar game plan. And I would like to see Bloom make a resurgence, but I appreciate it's unlikely, because to play Bloom, you have to play Bloom rearguards, and as we know, Bloom rearguards are stuck in the past. Which is a big shame, but whatever. But what I'd like to see is just no plant tokens, please. Like, the problem I have with Neonectar in the V series is that V Neonectar is so different to old Neonectar. Like, plant tokens came out of nowhere and nothing else old interacts with them. Plus, some of us are still suffering from Katrina PTSD, so the further we stay away from that, the better. One thing I think Neonectar doesn't have yet is a proper Vanguard restander. So maybe one of those? Like, if the cost has to be sack plant tokens, I can live with that, but it would be cool to have. But beyond that, a lot of V Neonectar stuff is very important, is very reliant on the Vanguard circle, like V Arboros, V Musketeers, V Arsha Fairy tokens. So maybe they deserve their own Crystal Luster just for the 15k and the drive. I'm okay with it. In terms of G-Guards, again, because there's such a disconnect between Musketeers and Arsha and Arboros, the only really thing that all those styles want is just a straight up slimy flare. Like, Musketeers and Bloom both want to put their rearguards back into the deck, and they could both do with a bit of deck thinning and maybe, you know, dig for a PG or just dig for raw shield value. So yeah, just straight up print slimy flare but with the word Neonectar on it. I think I can't imagine any Neonectar players would be unhappy with that at all.
Lastly, let's talk about Mega Colony, the Clarence of the family, so to say. Throughout V, and you'll hear me say this a lot in a lot of my Mega Colony based videos. Throughout V, Mega Colony has what we'd like to call an identity crisis, also known as Ligma.
The hell is Steve Jobs?
Ligma balls. They've transitioned from stun to mill to cradle markers to stealing your opponent's damage checks as your own drive checks.
Do whatever the hell Master Beetle is.
Yeah, whatever the hell Master Beetle is. And as such, they are a jack of all trades, but master of none. And they aren't even jacks, they're like bad. That being said, the Gridora Darkface Stride is really fucking good. And Overwhelm is really fucking good. We can appreciate that of late, Mega Colony has been trending towards the make my opponent play less Vanguard kind of game plan. So how do we double up on that kind of game plan, and how do we really make your opponent play less Vanguard? Like, Overwhelm is a really good farming stride to build up your hand and find pieces. Gridora Darkface is a really good mid-game stride to whittle at your opponent's resources. Now we just need a really good endgame option. Something similar to Boss Assail, a guard restrict that checks not for your damage, but for rested rearguard. Simple. Maybe something similar to Vigarafa to force calls as rested and stun them. Maybe eventually at a certain point, if your opponent has an empty board, you force your opponent to call 5 as rested. That's hand rip 5, we love that. And now that Mega Colony has a little bit of multi-attack, the guard restrict, the rip 5 out in hand, it just goes that much farther. As with the G-Guard, it's simple, it's sweet, it's Mega Colony, rest of rearguard, that's it. 15k, G-Guard, rest of rearguard.
You imagine that we've had this effect already, but no, Mega Colony is not allowed to have nice things apparently.
Now, we did get Brilliant Blister in the V. Now, we did get Brilliant Blister revealed recently, which does something similar, but I don't want to discard a card if I don't have to. If I can G-Guard to do what Brilliant Blister does, you bet I will.
So that wraps up, what we're sort of half wishing, half expecting, half hoping to come out of premium selection. If you guys have any ideas, like any cards you want to see, any effects, feel free to drop them down in the comment below, let us know. If not, as always, thumb up the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it. It won't hurt our feelings, we promise. And yeah, that's other than that. We've been Zistral and Toku with YellowCard Vanguard. As always, SBTCG Toku for him, SBTG YellowCard for me, strictlybroken.ca. Go pre-order your premium collection singles. They'll be up soon, TM. But yeah, if nothing else, subscribe to the channel, check us out all on the socials, see what we're doing next, and we'll see you all very soon. Take care.